For the second consecutive series, Game 4 automatically becomes the most important game of the series for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Bay Bolts channel. My name is Michael Wax. I'll be doing another solo edition of Quick Strike where we look at the game that was. This time it was Game 3 of the second round, where the Tampa Bay Lightning fell to the Carolina Hurricanes in overtime 3-2, bringing the series to Tampa Bay 2, Carolina 1. Let's get into what we saw in that game. First period, not a ton happened in terms of goals for. Now, there was a lot of really good chances. I thought both teams had opportunities to score their first goal of the game, break the ice, but ultimately both goalies were good. Peter Mrazek coming in for Alex Nedeljkovic in this game was a questionable decision because Nedeljkovic did not play that poorly. But at the end of the day, Mrazek proved to be the right decision because he was fantastic. And we'll get into it later in the third period. But overall, what a great performance from him. Now, as we get into the second period, things started to pick up for the Hurricanes, not necessarily for the Lightning, as two odd man rush goals. The first one was more of an odd man rush, the second one was more of a breakaway. And Carolina builds a 2-0 lead, their first lead of the entire series. And Sebastian Aho was a part of both of these goals. He was fantastic tonight, being a part of all three of the Hurricanes' goals. He was great. Teravainen, his line mate, was great. But at the same time, the Lightning need to key in on that line, which they have not done for the majority of the series. That line has still gotten chance after chance after chance, and they've buried a lot of the chances that they've gotten. Pesci got his second. Aho got his sixth. I know Andre Vasilevsky would have loved to stop that Sebastian Aho breakaway. It went 5-hole. That's something that, Andre Vasilevsky has yet to clean up in his couple of years in the league. But ultimately, I can't complain about Vasilevsky because it was a breakaway. It was a defensive breakdown. The defense was not that bad for the entirety of the game. Luke Chen looked really good in his replacement of David Savard once again. Eric Chernak has been utterly fantastic in this series. Victor Hedman is starting to look like himself. Mikhail Sergachev is starting to look like himself. And ultimately, that is where these defensive miscues, I think, were so troublesome for the Lightning, is because they didn't have so many. They didn't have that many uh, defensive breakdowns, but when they did, Carolina capitalized because Carolina is a great team, and ultimately that is what did the Lightning in the second period, at least in the first half. And then the Lightning ended up getting power play time, which for the Lightning, it's a bit of a 50-50 toss up because Carolina has such a fantastic penalty kill. And the Lightning's power play has struggled in this second round series. They do have a goal, but ultimately, that goal came when it was a real struggle on the rest of that power play for them. And they ended up lucking into a goal with their one shot in net being put behind Alex Nedeljkovic. But this time, power play was fantastic. Some beautiful passing from Stamkos to Kucherov to Braden Point, and he retakes the team lead with his sixth goal of the playoffs to bring the Lightning within one. Then a couple of minutes later, Alex Killorn gets on the score sheet with a great zone entry from Braden Point. Kucherov has a shot that is fought off by Mrazek. He gets it over to Killorn, who puts it in the open net. And all of a sudden, the game that was at one point a couple of minutes ago 2-0 is now 2-2, and the status quo from the first period returned in the third period, at least to a much higher degree. You look at that third period, chances for both teams, both goalies had to be fantastic in net. Uh, there were some really, really solid opportunities for someone like Sorelli or Jan Bruda. There was a play where Tyler Johnson and Ross Colton were getting into the mix. Everyone on the Lightning's forward side of things did their part. Everyone's on the Lightning's defensive side of things did their part. This is the type of period that we expect from these two teams where they're just throwing haymakers at each other and nobody scored in that period, but they did a great job of just putting up enjoyable hockey, which is all that you can really ask for if no team is scoring uh, any goals or anything like that. Now, the Lightning did get a power play at the end of the third period. Alex Killorn getting a tripping call called against him. Dougie Hamilton was the guilty party. A lot of people have said this is a ticky tack call. You can't call this type of thing in the final minute of regulation, leading to a possible power play in overtime or a game winning goal in the final minute of regulation. And we'll get to another ticky tack call later. But ultimately, one of the things that really did the Lightning in is the Carolina Hurricanes did that what they were supposed to on that penalty kill. They killed the penalty. The Lightning ultimately did not. And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but they ultimately didn't kill the penalty. That's what did the Lightning in. You could talk about how the referees may have screwed your team over, but at the end of the day, your penalty kill has to do what they're supposed to do, and you'll win the game most likely. So going into overtime, the Lightning looked really good. Like they looked like the better team in overtime. And then in the offensive zone, with about 5 minutes into overtime, uh, Nikita Kucherov takes a holding the stick penalty. Say what you want again, but the referees game managing, trying to make the penalties even, making sure that Carolina is going to win the game so that we can go to 7 games and we can do all the ratings and the money and the blah blah blah. Man, like I understand it's a ticky tack call. You have to kill the penalty off, and the penalty kill that had been so good for the rest of that game just collapsed. As soon as Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman got off the ice, it collapsed. Mikhail Sergachev and Victor Hedman stood absolutely still, both of them on each side of Vasilevsky, allowing Jordan Stahl to be right in front. Nobody was also covering Sebastian Aho, who was in the slot. He gets the pass from Teravainen. He rips a one-timer. Jordan Stahl tips it. Ultimately, that's the game winner. Tampa Bay loses. They still hold the series lead. This is not a call for help, but they would have greatly benefited from winning game 3. And now, hopefully, like they did in the Florida series, they come out roaring and score a ton of goals in game 4. Now, I hope game 4 does not end up in the Carolina series like it did in the Florida series, where we saw a ton of injuries later in that game. But the Lightning need to stick to their game plan that first 70 minutes, or more like 64 minutes, where they were not maybe the better team, but they were generating chances. Peter Mrazek was absolutely fantastic in net for the Carolina Hurricanes. He replaced Alex Nedeljkovic in net, which was a weird thing to see because Nedeljkovic did not actually play that poorly, but they decided to make the goalie switch, and hey, it ended up working out for them. The Lightning have got to be better when it comes to taking out that Teravainen, Aho, Svechnikov line. That line has accounted for all but one of the goals, I believe. And the one goal they didn't account for was on the power play where Jake Bean had his first playoff goal. Got to be better, whether it is the Braden Point line, the Anthony Cirelli line, or for some unforsaken reason, if the fourth line's out there against that line, they've got to be better. So ultimately, again, the Lightning are up 2-1 in the series. Not a terrible series to start off with. It seems like the road team is going to win every single game, which is going to bode well for the Lightning when they win in game 7. But with that, we're going to get to your fan questions. Make sure to respond to our tweet online at Bay_Bolts to get your fan questions read on our channel after each game recap. We only have one today. This is coming from Eric S80505. Why can't Stamkos hit the net? I believe he's referring to Stamkos's multiple missed shots on one-timers and various things like that. I gotta disagree. I understand that it's frustrating that Stamkos isn't hitting the net sometimes, but you could say that about any player. Stamkos is still hurt. He's still recovering from that injury that kept him out the last month of the season. And ultimately, that's going to impact him, whether that be his shot or his skating. We don't know what the injury is. We won't know what it is until after the playoffs. You're going to have to just deal with it. Like, he has scored goals in these playoffs, and he has helped the Lightning win in these playoffs. And if he misses the net a couple times, I don't see that being a massive issue. What I was more concerned about in the first game, and it got better in the second game because the second line as a whole was fantastic. And the third game, Stamkos was probably the weakest link of that line, but that second line was great again. Anthony Cirelli and Alex Killorn were utterly fantastic. But in that second game that we saw against Carolina Hurricanes, Steven Stamkos was a lot more active. And that's something that we didn't necessarily see in game one. He was more passive. He was not great in his own zone. It really begged into question of, what's going on with Steven Stamkos. He got a lot better in game two. He was not the best in game three, I will admit. Like, he had some opportunities that he just did not bury. And if he does bury those opportunities, hey, maybe the Lightning come out of this with a 3-0 series lead. His beautiful pass to Kucherov ended up setting up point on that first goal. He was a presence on the power play. People still have to make sure that they cover Steven Stamkos, which opens up a ton of possibilities. And ultimately, I expect Steven Stamkos to be better in game four than he was in game three. And he still was not that bad in game three. So that is going to do it for us on this edition of Quick Strike. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Ring that bell for notifications so you know whenever we post a new video. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Bay_Bolts for all your news, notes, and game recaps. We do the live game coverage on every single game on Twitter. So make sure to follow us there. And remember, series is 2-1 Lightning. Ultimately, this could go either way. Series still has a lot to play out. Take care.